New York, in color, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Charles Collingwood in New York, Marvin Kalb in Washington, George Siebertson in Saigon, Larry Pomeroy in Bethlehem, Jed Duval in Colorado Springs, and David Culhane in Edgartown.
Good evening. Our Moscow correspondent, William Cole, quotes informed Soviet sources tonight as saying that North Vietnam's Ho Chi Minh is dead. It should be emphasized that this is not official. The latest word from Hanoi is that the 79-year-old communist leader still is alive, but that his condition is grave and deteriorating. The unconfirmed Moscow report said that he died early today, Vietnam time. In recent months, Ho made public appearances only on rare occasions. In May, just after celebrating his 79th birthday, he showed up at a children's festival in Hanoi. And once again, he demonstrated the strength of his popular image as a father figure among the North Vietnamese. A few weeks later, Ho appeared at a Hanoi ceremony with Premier Pham Van Dong, Defense Minister Giap, and other top leaders to hail the establishment of a so-called provisional revolutionary government by the Viet Cong in South Vietnam. As for Ho, his history of poor health, connected with a heart condition, stretched over a period of several years. And there were reports that it finally reached the critical stage in late July. And then last night came the official word of his illness. And as in every other communist country, such communiques usually are not issued unless there is little chance that the leader will survive. The big question now is what impact Ho's departure will have on Hanoi's strategy in the war and at the peace talks. Washington has been busy assessing the situation, and we have a report from CBS News diplomatic correspondent Marvin Kalb.
After a series of hurry-up meetings starting last night, the administration has concluded that Ho's death will not significantly change Hanoi's policy on the war, neither at the negotiating table in Paris nor on the battlefield in South Vietnam. But fearful of what they take to be the one chance in 100 they could be wrong, officials are now trying to compose a new diplomatic approach for peace in Vietnam, to be presented in Paris as soon after Ho's death as respectability allows. No details are yet available, but it's known that some State Department officials will now press for significant and dramatic U.S. troop withdrawals, enough to meet Hanoi's hint last night that such withdrawals could break the negotiating deadlock in Paris. These officials realize that the Pentagon, Saigon, and U.S. Ambassador Ellsworth Bunker are reluctant to go too far too fast, but many of them feel that Ho's death could represent an historic moment that must be tested. Marvin Kalb, CBS News, Washington.
Charles Collingwood, our chief foreign correspondent and a specialist on Vietnamese affairs, will have some comments on the Hanoi developments later in this broadcast.
Still up?
I can't sleep.
Take a sleeping tablet.
No, they're all alike.
This one's different. It's Nitol.
Safe?
Sure, just follow directions. And it's non-habit forming.
So what's different?
Look, read this ad in Good Housekeeping.
Nitol dissolves twice as fast as any other leading tablet.
And helps you get to sleep fast. And wake up refreshed.
Nitol tablets. Or the new fast-acting capsule, both with the Good Housekeeping seal.
Do you soak your dentures clean? You can brush them cleaner with Denture Cream. Look, we soaked that heavy lipstick stain, soaked it all night in a leading tablet cleanser. Even with soaking and vigorous brushing, that denture material is still stained. Now try Denture Cream, the powerful denture toothpaste. In no time, Denture Cream scrubs, brushes, polishes dentures clean, leaves your mouth toothpaste fresh. See the difference? Denture Cream outcleans your soak.
The United States has tried repeatedly, without success, to obtain a list of the hundreds of American prisoners held by the North Vietnamese. Well, apparently, the Pentagon has found out who a lot of those men are, despite Hanoi's lack of cooperation. CBS News has learned that one of those 3 Americans released by the communists last month, Air Force Captain Wesley Rumble, has a photographic memory. And when he learned of his imminent release, he memorized the name of every fellow prisoner he had seen or even heard mentioned. And the first thing Rumble did on his return to this country was to put the entire list down on a tape recorder. The Defense Department, without confirming the Rumble story, did disclose that from the information obtained from Rumble and the 2 other returnees, he was able to identify more than 50 American prisoners, and their families have been notified. In the war today, American B-52 bombers dropped tons of explosives on dense jungles near Cambodia. They were trying to dislodge an enemy force that inflicted heavy casualties on 2 South Vietnamese units. The fighting in that area began Sunday, and there were reports of new clashes there this evening. There have been no figures on enemy losses, but government casualties now are put at 200 dead, wounded, or missing. Earlier this week, most of the American troops assigned to the critical Mekong Delta south of Saigon were withdrawn from that area, turning over the fighting role to the South Vietnamese. This evening, we have a report on the situation in the Delta from George Sievertson.
One of the most frequently repeated pieces of conventional wisdom in this war has been that unless the Viet Cong can be beaten in the Delta, the South Vietnamese government can have no hope of winning the war. The Delta is where most of South Vietnam's population is concentrated, where most of its food is grown, the richest and most coveted area in Southeast Asia. Up until last year, the Delta belonged to the Viet Cong. Most of its leaders came from the Delta, most of its recruits came from there, and most of its money in taxes and extortion. But since last year, there's been a dramatic reversal of the government and the Viet Cong positions in the Delta. While the government has been growing stronger, the Viet Cong have become weaker. They're having trouble finding enough recruits and are replacing their losses with less effective North Vietnamese regular soldiers. Their underground apparatus is slowly being whittled down by arrests and defections. Major General Roderick Wetherill, the top American advisor in the Delta.
We still have they're really more displaced persons than they are refugees. They're people that have come out of the hinterlands where the VC have been able to tax them and abduct them and terrorize them into serving in their forces. And to avoid that, they'll come into the cities. Now, following the troop explosion, now we're having this gradual return to the countryside, which, as I say, is most heartening.
Most of the U.S. 9th Division has been withdrawn from the Delta, and the rest are soon to go. The only American soldiers there now are a few engineer battalions building and repairing roads. The fighting is being done by the Vietnamese.
I don't think we'll ever bring U.S. troops back here. I just can't conceive of a situation where we would have to redeploy U.S. troops here in the Delta.
American civilian advisors earlier this year argued forcefully for the withdrawal of the American division from the Delta. Turn the job over to the Vietnamese, they urged, and put the emphasis on pacification and security rather than killing VC. So the 9th was withdrawn. And so far, they haven't been missed.
Well, from a civilian advisor's point of view, would you have preferred to see the 9th stay around?
No, frankly, I'd rather see this, let the Vietnamese do it. I think there's an increasing feeling here, by golly, let the Vietnamese do it. We've done it for them, and like the old saying in India, only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. Well, the Americans have gone out in the midday sun too long, and let the Vietnamese do it. I think they can.
As Mr. Holdren said, it is safe now to drive through much of the Delta, unless, of course, you happen to run into a hole in the road, as we did on the way back. In the 6 days we spent driving almost 400 miles around the Delta, we saw much that had changed since the first time we were there 2 years ago. It seemed clear from what we saw that the government of South Vietnam still has a ways to go to win the war in the Delta. But on the other hand, the enemy has even further to go to win back the ground he's lost. George Sievertson, CBS News, back in Saigon.
The United States and Thailand today began talks on the gradual withdrawal of 50,000 American troops stationed in that country. From all indications, it will be a long, drawn-out process, though, geared mainly to the rate of U.S. withdrawals from neighboring South Vietnam. The Marine Commandant, in an order to be read to all his men within 2 days, appealed to the entire Corps today to reduce racial tension. Toward that end, General Leonard Chapman's message made clear that Negro Marines should have more leeway in expressing racial pride. This includes permission to wear Afro-style haircuts if they're not too extreme, and soul music on the jukeboxes of servicemen's clubs. He also said that the clenched fist salute to black power would not be banned except during official ceremonies or when used to suggest defiance of authority.
America's railroads. Who needs them? Mercury, Gemini, Apollo. Railroads moved sand, cement, stone to build Cape Kennedy, rock to build the launching pads, steel to build the gantries, generators to power Cape Kennedy. And railroads moved fuel to Cape Kennedy, helium, liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen. In fact, without the railroads, the space program might not yet be off the ground. America's railroads. Who needs them? You do.
In Middle East fighting, Israeli planes today attacked Arab bases in Jordan and southeast Lebanon. Officials in Tel Aviv said the raids were in retaliation for guerrilla rocket attacks that killed 2 Israeli civilians and wounded several others. Israeli army helicopters and police tonight continue to scour the Judean desert near the Dead Sea for former Episcopal Bishop James Pike, lost in the area for the last 2 days. In Jerusalem today, his wife, Diane, found wandering in the desert yesterday, described to CBS newsman Larry Pomeroy the ordeal after the couple's car broke down.
They had told us that you can only survive 7 hours in the desert without water, and all we had left was 1 bottle of Coca-Cola. So we thought it was better to try to start walking. So we kept walking, and after we'd walked for about 2 hours, Jim felt he couldn't go any farther. So we lay down first in a cave to rest, and we rested for quite a while. Then we tried to walk again, and he said he just couldn't go any farther. He felt he needed to sleep. So I said I would go for help, but I started to climb out of the Wadi, and I couldn't get up there. It was impossible. So I went back to where Jim was, and I said that if we were both going to die in the desert, I wanted to die with him there.
What made you go on? Did he ask you to go on?
I rested for a few more minutes, and then I thought, since I still had strength, that it made more sense for me to try to go and find help than to lie there, because no one would ever have found us. No one knew we had gone there, and I didn't know where we were. I thought we were close to Qumran. So I told him I would go on to find help, and he said that he thought I should do that. And we said that we would probably both die in the desert. So we said goodbye to each other. And his last words to me were that he was at peace and had no regrets about anything, because we were so happy and our love was so great.
You haven't given up hope, though, that he may be found and he's still alive, have you?
The police tell me that if he's in a cave where he's not in the sunlight, that people have been known to survive as long as 7 days. I just hope he didn't try to walk. If he tried to walk, then he was using his strength for walking instead of staying. But today they found a map, which was at the place where I had left him. So he must have walked on from there somewhere. I just hope he's in a cave. If he's in a cave, he could be all right. If he's in the sunlight, he couldn't survive.
The Associated Press reports from Washington that U.S. radio monitors have picked up a Hanoi broadcast reporting the death of North Vietnamese leader Ho Chi Minh. Tests confirmed today that Senator Everett Dirksen's operation was for lung cancer. A report from Walter Reed Army Hospital said that the tumor was removed. There was no evidence that it had spread, and there is no indication of a need for further surgery or treatment. The report described the 73-year-old minority leader's progress as excellent.
The following demonstration will be performed under actual bathroom conditions. This is the Persona electrocoated blade. It shaves so comfortably, we'll stack it up used against a new blade. We'll use it once. And again. and again. Now, even after 4 burly beards, we feel this used persona will take on any new blade in your house. Prove it to yourself.
When you're on edge, it's time for Clark's Cinnamon Gum. Cinnamon's got a super shot of cinnamon flavor to help you over life's little tensions. Clark's Cinnamon, the gum with gumption.
The Western White House acknowledged today that President Nixon plans cutbacks in federal construction as a move against inflation. But the spokesman said no final decision has been made on how many or which projects to defer. Word of the plan, leading from a closed meeting with Vice President Agnew with the nation's governors, indicated it would stop 75% of the new buildings and highways. Jed Duvall sampled reaction at the governor's conference in Colorado Springs.
Many governors withheld judgment, but Connecticut's John Dempsey, a Democrat, fears the worst.
Well, I was shocked. I didn't think at this conference this would come out at all, and we were told about it yesterday afternoon in deep secrecy, but I'm an old-timer. I know secrecy means that it's going to be leaked 5 minutes after, 5 minutes before. It was one of amazement and one of shock, and I think I'm a typical governor. I'm just in a hurry to get back to my own state to see what real implications it will have and what effect it's going to have on the programs. I'll be very surprised if most governors do not return to their states and immediately, as far as the road program is concerned, they will immediately start to take advantage of every contract they possibly can to beat the dateline of April 1st. Now, if that action alone is not going to create more inflation than anything we've ever done, believe me, this is it. I'm very disappointed with the announcement in my own state. It will hurt. The immediate program will hurt perhaps more than the long-range program.
Some Republican governors defend the interval as a time for adjustment. Mr. Nixon's representative, Herb Klein, indicated that timing is still open.
Well, any announcement as to the final form that this will take will have to come from the White House, of course, but there is discussion within the administration as to when the state phase of it should take effect, whether it should be now or in April. The tentative decision leans toward April, but you have to look at how the governors are reacting as to whether it would diminish the effectiveness of this.
How are the governors reacting to you?
Well, I think their initial reaction was one of a little bit of shock, but I think that they've looked at it during the evening, and most of them recognize that you have to take strong steps if we're going to get at inflation.
Oregon's McCall would take stronger action.
Our whole state is attuned to federal expenditures, and it seems to me that it would be a very depressing kind of a move on the economy of the state of Oregon. I think if it's that grave a situation, Jed, that you take the bull by the horns and you really go in and explore full tilt ahead general wage and price controls. That's the kind of way, kind of a crisis way to meet a crisis.
Wage and price controls?
Wage and price controls. If it is an enormous problem, as pictured by the president, and as I feel it is, then you don't try a perfectly untried kind of a system that might actually bring on a depression even more than something that is more obnoxious on the surface, but whose results can be more accurately predicted.
Representatives of the 3.5 million member Episcopal Church today voted in their convention to give $200,000 to Negroes for development of the black community. If approved, as expected by the House of Bishops, the money is to be channeled through the National Committee of Black Clergymen and probably will go to the controversial Black Economic Development Conference, the organization for which James Foreman has been spokesman. Racial violence in Camden, New Jersey last night took the lives of a white policeman and a teenage Negro girl. Authorities said both apparently were hit by the same volley of sniper fire during the second night of disorders in that city. In two other troubled cities, Fort Lauderdale and Hartford, states of emergency, curfews, and police reinforcements reduced but did not end the violence, and the curfews will be in effect again tonight. A Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania judge today refused the request by the parents of Mary Jo Kopechne to bar an autopsy on their daughter's body. However, Judge Bernard Braminsky also refused to let the body be exhumed unless Massachusetts prosecutor Edmund Denise produces, within the next 20 days, sufficient facts to warrant an autopsy. CBS News correspondent Morton Dean reports from Massachusetts that sources say Denise has additional information and may submit it to Braminsky within 10 days. Meanwhile, Denise reportedly is going to continue to press for an inquest into Miss Kopechne's death, despite yesterday's temporary injunction against the proceeding. Denise is said to think a compromise barring reporters will satisfy judicial concern about publicity in the case. The inquest was to have started today in Edgartown, Massachusetts, and David Culhane reports today's developments from there.
This is about the way it would have looked in Edgartown if the inquest had started on schedule. But about the only thing that happened here this morning was one of the shortest court sessions on record.
Judge James Boyle entered a courtroom crowded with 100 or more reporters, noted the order of the Massachusetts Supreme Court delaying the inquest, and, not surprisingly, agreed to do just that. Police Chief Dominic Arena, who has given literally hundreds of press conferences in the last month, gave one more, at least for the time being. He was asked about the postponement.
I'm glad in a way that if it came at a later time, as I said, the only thing that would make me feel relieved is that it would come at a time when there'd be much less general traffic around the town and easier for us to control security and traffic and watch. No other comment except thank you very much.
All that remained was the anticlimactic tearing down of the elaborate constructions and facilities set up for the newsmen from around the world. The camera platforms, the live television units, and the great banks of telephones connected in a nearby church had transformed this little resort town and led Senator Edward Kennedy's lawyers to talk about a gathering crescendo of publicity. This morning, in something like an hour, the whole thing was reduced to a diminuendo. And now the resort has been turned back to the last remaining summer tourists, who promptly left off standing around the courthouse and returned to their proper pursuit of leisure. David Culhane, CBS News, Edgartown, Massachusetts.
U.S. Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall today refused to overturn lower court decisions and bar the Atomic Energy Commission from setting off a 40-kiloton blast in western Colorado tomorrow. A federal judge in Denver also turned down the last-minute appeal by conservationists to halt the underground explosion. Known as Project Rudison, the blast is designed to free natural gas trapped in the rock. Despite reports to the contrary, 9 cigarette companies have not as yet reached final agreement for testing of a compound called Chemisol to see if it can remove a suspected cancer-causing agent from tobacco. According to a tobacco industry spokesman, the companies 2 years ago proposed to the developers of Chemisol that it be independently tested and that the cigarette companies would pay for the testing. Last month, Chemisol's developers agreed to the proposal. However, the organization had designated to do the testing Hazelton Laboratories of Falls Church, Virginia, says it has not as yet agreed to undertake the job, although it expects that it will. Averages on the New York Stock Exchange declined today on a volume of 8,750,000 shares. The New York Exchange Index lost 28 cents, and the American Exchange Index dropped 18 cents.
You know, I saw a new instant tea today, girls. It's 100% tea.
You can't get a 100% good glass of iced tea with an instant.
She's right. Taste the refreshing flavor. That's real tea.
You can't get that with an instant.
That's just what you've been drinking.
Lipton's very new instant tea. 100% tea. Everything you love about teabag tea, with no strings attached.
We asked these women to tell us the difference between soap and Dove. 10 minutes after application, they did, without saying a word. Dove is 1/4 cleansing cream. It simply can't dry your skin the way soap can.
A few minutes ago, the Associated Press reported from Washington that U.S. radio monitors had picked up a Hanoi announcement that the Ho Chi Minh, the leader of the North Vietnamese nation, was dead. Charles Collingwood has some thoughts on that North Vietnamese leader and his successors.
How a communist government like the one in Hanoi really works. But it's highly unlikely that the death of Ho Chi Minh will precipitate any immediate or obvious struggle for power. The North Vietnamese have been prepared for this for a long time. When I was in Hanoi over a year ago and wanted to see Ho Chi Minh, no one made any bones then about the fact that he was an old man and not very well, and that the conservation of his energies did not permit interviews with visiting American correspondents. so I didn't see him then. But even then, they were discussing what would happen when this grand old man of Southeast Asian communism passed from the scene. It seemed clear at that time that the present Prime Minister, Pham Van Dong, would continue to be the front man of the government. Of all the ruling group in Hanoi, Pham Van Dong is the only one who possesses anything like the charisma which Uncle Ho radiated. Pham Van Dong is a very attractive and well-known personality in North Vietnam. The other important men in the regime, like Lê Duan, who is the party boss, or Trong Chin, who is the communist theoretician, or even General Giap himself, are shadowy figures who operate behind the scenes. Some of them may wax or wane in authority with Ho gone, but they will continue to operate as a group, and not very differently probably than the way they're operating now. That's part of the legacy that Ho Chi Minh left North Vietnam. A group at the top who have been together longer than any other communist hierarchy in the world and who are used both to power and to each other. Their roles and the terms of the succession have undoubtedly been determined long ago and in consultation with Ho Chi Minh himself. For his contribution has been that of a superb organizer and administrator. It is by this that Ho Chi Minh will be remembered, not primarily as a communist, for he was never much of an ideologue, but as the man who brought efficient government to Vietnam for the first time in 2,000 years, and thus mobilized the whole country to throw off the yoke of the French and North Vietnam to resist the vastly superior technology of the United States. In a sense, it was an accident that Ho Chi Minh was a communist at all. A revolutionary patriot in his day had nowhere else to go. What he was an intense and dedicated nationalist with a gift for government and for clandestine operations. This made him an enormously effective wartime leader, a national hero to many in the South as well as the North. How Ho Chi Minh would have coped with the problems of peace, we will never know. But it is there that his successors will be tested, and they won't have the wily old fox of Hanoi to help steer them around the pitfalls of transition when this war finally comes to an end. Walter?
And that's the way it is. Wednesday, September 3rd, 1969. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
For Excedrin headaches, get Excedrin Relief.
When I got home, I had a lot of tension, and I'd come home with a throbbing headache, and if I needed to take something, I would take Excedrin.
You can also take Excedrin for minor pain of arthritis and get hours of relief.
I have a little arthritis in my thumbs, and when that acts up, I use it too, and I think it works very well.
Excedrin has 4 pain relief ingredients for headaches. It has extra strength for more than headaches.
As a matter of fact, I had a sprained ankle recently, so I used it, every 4 hours, so it helped out.
Or any kind of a muscle strain or aching.
You know what? I had a toothache and I took Excedrin and it helped.
Excedrin is for more than just headaches. It's for pain. Excedrin, the extra strength pain reliever.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, in color, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.